Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Rafique and Partners webinar series on Survivor Pupillage Edition by our Miss Idza Hajar. My name is Amelia Soraya, and I'll be your host for this webinar. Thank you for joining us today. Before we begin, just some housekeeping announcements. One, the webinar is recorded. Please ensure that your microphone is muted throughout the entire webinar. We will be applying the mute all functions. If you have any questions, please post them on Slido at any time. The link or the QR code is available in the chat box. We will address the questions during the Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. Should you experience any technical issues, please raise it in the chat box. Our team will assist you. Alternatively, you can restart the app if there are technical problems. Without further ado, I'd like to begin by introducing our speaker for today, Ms. Idza Hajar. Ms. Idza is a partner in the Litigation Practice Group. She obtained her Bachelor of Laws degree from University Technology Mara and was admitted as an advocate and solicitor of the High Court of Malaya in 2007. Idza's main area of practice is corporate and commercial litigation and arbitration. She has been involved in some of the most complex shareholder, boardroom, and corporate insolvency and restructuring disputes in the country. Idza has appeared in the lower courts, High Court, and appellate courts of Malaysia and have been involved in a number of landmark decisions on novel principles of law in Malaysia. Idza specializes in the very niche area of conducting pre-litigation assessment and management exercises and the conduct of litigation forensic exercises. Idza also actively participates in leadership programs for young lawyers and law students and often appears as a judge for various mooting competitions nationwide. Idza is a recommended lawyer in the Legal 500 2019 Asia Pacific for dispute resolution. Idza has also been named Future Star by Benchmark Litigation Asia Pacific 2019 and 2020. Idza is also an active in the efforts to improve the quality of law students and young members of the bar, and often serves as a judge to various national and international moot competitions every year. So basically, she's the perfect person to give a talk today. So without further ado, I give the stage to Ms. Idza.
Hi everybody, I'd like to thank everybody for joining in on the talk today. If you looked at the link when you first registered, this talk is called Pupillage Survivor Edition. So initially this was a talk that I gave quite recently for in-house pupils or chambering students of the firm. I think the firm is now opening up to the public, and I hope what I'm canvassing before everybody today will be of use to everyone for whatever purpose, whether you're chambering, whether you're a student that's going to chamber, whether you are in-house or in practice. These are practical skills that you can use all throughout if you're starting out. Okay, I have with me my trusty lawyers who are going to assist me for the day. So JC, can you just start flashing the presentation? All right, so let me just start. As you can see, it's called Survivor Chambering Edition by me. So let's move on to the first portion of Prezi. Lag here, I can't see. All right. Prior to that, JC. So I just want to start off by can you home in a bit to make it bigger? So I just want to start off by basically laying out when it comes to chambering students and those who are started chambering. So what does a law degree teach you, right? And I suppose it teaches you basic subjects in law. I say that because you realize when you start chambering that what you learn doesn't really cover everything when you start practice. So it is so broad, so much more specific. But what you basically have been doing all this while is just scratching the surface, trying to the last thing, I suppose the most important when it comes to a learning practice, that you need to pass to graduate, right? That's what basically a law degree, all your lecturers, all the subjects would want you to do. Before you can put on a robe and get flowers and be congratulated, you have to pass your exams. And for some of you, especially the pupils here today, in the firm, you pass with flying colors, so congratulations. So then I go to the next part of the presentation. So if you look at what a law degree doesn't teach you, and that's, I hope, what you'll be able to learn when you start chambering, is how to be a lawyer. Everything else they teach you, but how is it that you're supposed to be when it comes to either becoming a practitioner, joining in-house, or becoming an FC, or becoming an EPP? It doesn't teach you that. That one, so you suddenly, after law school, you start chambering, or you join in-house, or you become part of the fiduciary, you join the ladies' chambers, and you realize, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? Nobody ever taught me this. All I know is that suddenly I'm bombarded by court appearances. I mean, if you're like in the ladies' chambers, you go straight away. It's not like, like a chambering process where you don't have to for the first couple of months, right? If you join the government, for instance, DPP, FC, you just like, okay, take this 100 files, go do it. So you are basically ill prepared for that next stage. Okay? So I hope by this talk I can give you some of the skills that you need, some of the things that you need to take note of in your growth in becoming a lawyer. Right, JC, maybe next part. Alright, so basically, when I talk about a long journey lies ahead, it doesn't necessarily mean chambering. Chambering is the starting off process, but your legal career is really ahead of you. And it's not without challenges. In fact, I think compared to law school, this is actual adulting after this that you really have to. You can't wake up one day, I don't want to do it anymore. It's something that you really have to commit to because you graduated. This is the path that you've chosen. How do you then survive something so difficult? And it forms essentially a long part of your life. I'm still doing it, and I've only been doing this for 16 years, I think. How do I do it every single day without stopping? So, what is it that you need to know to survive? Maybe next, JC. Right. So, I put a zombie picture there. In zombie, they walk slowly, they eat other people's brains. But what I think zombie encapsulates is absolute survival. I mean, you're dead and you're still walking. So something that you need to really think when you are sort of like amylix, maybe chambering or practice, I'm not sure. Carry on, JC. Okay, so you started your pupillage. For those who have not started, students, for those who have started, maybe you've already filed your chambering papers. But basics, you must file your chambering papers promptly, preferably without mistakes. If you file it with mistakes, you have to refile, you will be rejected. It costs money, it's not free. So something that you need to take note of, be very particular with details. Another thing that you need to start really taking control of is being punctual. So it actually goes without saying, but not a lot of us are actually punctual people. When I say punctual, if you're in London, for instance, punctual means arriving at something 10 minutes or 5 minutes before. It doesn't mean arriving on time, that's late. So those kind of like massive, if you're not used to being early for something or on time or something, it's something that you have to adjust to. Be punctual to court, be punctual to meetings, be punctual to the office. If the office mandates that you're in before a certain time, right? Unless of course it's an emergency or something. But it is a trait that you have to train yourself if you're not used to it. Adulting, when you are in court and you're late, or it has real consequences that can get you in trouble, or your partner in trouble, or the firm that you are chambering in trouble. So it applies equally all across the board when it comes to even in-house. There are very specific times for you to clock in and clock out. You might be subject to either points of your KPI or discipline action simply because you can't be punctual. So it's a good trait to have. Something that I have to remind myself as well. I'm not the most punctual person, but I try to be, on time. By that I mean 15 minutes before something. Okay. Basics, and I'll explain maybe a bit later. Be respectful to everyone, and I mean everyone, not just your fellow pupils, not just your partners, not just to somebody more senior than you. I mean absolutely everyone. And the last portion of chambering, I think that's important, is to try and enjoy your experience. It won't be the most easiest experience, but try to enjoy it. Try to forge relationships with your fellow chamberlain mates. Mine, I forge lifelong relationships, and like my family, we still meet each other from time to time because you are in it together for the next 9 months. You might as well bond and help each other. In fact, you only have each other, if somebody has a problem, and your chamberlain should help you out, vice versa. Okay, that's the basics that I think initially off the bat you should be aware of. Okay, then I go back to the principle where I said be respectful with everyone. Maybe we start with other lawyers. For instance, you must always be courteous. You may never know who you are speaking to. You always, and this actually comes from life experience. I remember a story that happened in this firm where I think it was either a pupil or a new lawyer that was in the lift. And I got told this by the person who was chided by that young lawyer or pupil. So it was casual day. What happened was it was one of the partners here, or rather I think the managing partner, that got into the lift because he was Friday, he dressed casually. So he wouldn't be able to tell that he owned the firm just by looking at him. So apparently this champion student or young lawyer was late, I think, for whatever reason. So, as an old person who walks slowly into the lift. So this young lawyer or champion pupil, then as he got in, he closed the lift door. He says, "Hey, please walk faster, I'm late. I'm late." So that's what he said in a moment of annoyance. I think he wasn't thinking when he said it. So then he got off on the lobby. So did the managing partner, or rather the partner. And then it was only later he realized that the person he chided was actually the managing partner. He was working for this person. And the managing partner always remembered that this person had scolded him because, the guy didn't know who he was. So the telltale, I suppose, the lesson that's to be learned is that you will never ever be able to know what that role or that person has a role in your life. So not knowing, I think, you just be nice to everybody, be respectful to everybody, and not just people who you think you can benefit from. So something that is good to have in life, also good to put in practice, right? He wasn't retained thereafter. Okay, the next, I suppose, dealing with other lawyers. That's the thing when you are chambering and you go to court or for meetings, and when you come back, you must always confirm the conversation that you had with the lawyers, because you might never know when there is A versus B in your story. It's always possible where you forgot to write down about it, you forgot to inform the lawyer in charge when you go to court. Suddenly something happens and what you say is not in tandem with what the other lawyer say. So always confirm your conversations to take note of your version of the story. Send it out. If not, it will work in your detriment later on in the future. So even if you're dealing with maybe works that are given to you by your bosses, by your superiors, by the partners, even by your friends, fellow teammates, or some of the younger lawyers, confirm that in writing so that you remember that you have to do it. Maybe you just put in the email, further to our chat, I will start work on A, B, and C, D. I confirm that based on our conversation, I have to revert by such and such a date. Settle your problem. So if there's any issue, there's always that email that confirms the conversation. Helpful for you, helpful for them. Because some of maybe the older lawyers or the partners, they're a bit busy, so it sort of slips their mind, so then they don't remember. And then they start becoming frazzled when the deadline is coming on. Okay, so maybe something that you need to take note of in your correspondence in the future. Okay, JC, next. Alright, dealing with other lawyers is one thing. How then I need you to take note of how to deal with your superiors, which is an important part of chambering. Not only chambering, in any place of work that you are in. So either you're in-house, either you're chambering, either you as a lawyer, young lawyer, old lawyer. I'm still doing it myself. Nobody except for the managing partner do not have superiors. I have superiors. My lawyers have me as a superior. You have everybody else as your superior. Okay, so dealing with them and dealing with them effectively is something that will ensure your survival and your sanity in this firm or any workplace that you have. So make careful note when you look at your superiors, for instance. I know that they are your bosses, but what you forget sometimes is that they're human. Human means just like you, they get annoyed, they get tired, they get happy, you know, they get upset, maybe they have a lack of sleep, whatever it is, you never know, but they share pretty much the same traits as you. The only difference between them and you is that they are older, because they were born first, that's all. Right? So I think when you are first assigned to somebody, that's what I always do. When I was first assigned to my ex-bosses, even my bosses now, I will always ask around meaning the secretary, the very important person, the gatekeeper, the secretary, maybe their lawyers, their colleagues. How is it? What's their style? Are they very particular on a few things? I've been thinking a lot lately. So try to find out from the correct people. And usually the secretary. The secretary will know everything that you need to know about your boss. Right? Because generally the secretaries will have worked with the lawyers for the longest, or the partners for the longest time. The superiors for the longest time. Know their work pace, their style. Always know. Some of them are last minute people. So how do you deal with last minute bosses? First of all, you keep your work ready. Second of all, always remind them, hey, boss, nak kena ribet lah. This is the deadline, you know. Why? Because I'm sort of like that, simply because I have too many things to do, sometimes I forget. So part of my lawyer's work scope, I think, is to constantly remind me, boss, bump on this email, boss, you need to input on this, boss, can you look at this now? So that's just how I am. So my lawyers have learned how to manage my personality. Same, I also have to learn how to manage their personality, right? My style, sometimes I like to do things in a particular way. So I usually, when they join the team, I probably tell them, I like things in a particular font, in a particular style, and I know, and I'll explain to them why I like it. But if your bosses don't explain to you, you can ask around, what kind of style they pakai, what kind of style do they use. Take note of it, and when work is given to you and you revert, just looking at the font and the spacing and everything that your superior likes, they will be impressed that this person took the time to know what I like and what I don't like. So the content may not be, maybe it's secondary, because when you're starting out, nobody expects you to give like a submission or a pleading or whatever agreement that is like something that a 5 or 6 year lawyer will produce. No, there's no such expectation. But the fact that you follow the format, wow, like for me, I will be, wow, the context I will just amend, it doesn't matter. But I will be very, very happy if somebody can follow at least that, right? So something that you must always take note of, right? Another thing is, because they are your superiors, you have to be respectful of them. Not respect, I mean as in you worship the ground they walk on. You don't just be mindful of what you say. They are not your friends, they are your bosses. That relationship of friendliness, I think, and bonding comes over time. But when you're first starting out, when you are trying to bond with your superior, you have to act accordingly. So that's something you have to, little keynotes that you have to take cue off. Let the bosses warm up to you, and then you reciprocate. Right? It's something that you really need to be mindful of. And when you shadow your superiors wherever they go, most of them are sort of like big picture people. So when you talk about your superiors, they have maybe 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 meetings a day. I mean, that's what happens to me. When my lawyers shadow me, I'm in one meeting after another, one meeting. So because I'm not big picture, I will not have the time to take down notes. I make mental notes in my head. So I know big picture things, what to do, strategy, what not. But accurate points of information I will miss because I have to go to the next meeting, and the next meeting, and the next meeting, or court, whatever it is. That is where you come in. Your job is to be very particular about the details. If you shadow lawyers or superiors for meetings, always take the minutes down. Usually the most junior will take the minutes down, that will be you. If you're, chambering or young lawyer, that will be you. If you have telephone conversation, also confirm it. If you speak with a client, which you may soon, or if you're in-house, you speak to your external solicitors, just make note of it. Make note of it, either in an email or in a written note that you stick to the file. The point is, these little details matter when it comes to if there's any issue later on. It is something that you say, oh, I wrote about it, it's in the file somewhere. So things that your boss might miss, which they will do, right? You can pick up, and that's how you complement each other, right? You must understand, no matter what they say, just like you cannot survive without your bosses, actually they also cannot survive without you. So it takes two sort of like to tango. I will be half a partner without my lawyers. So they are the most important thing to me because their work, their good work that they do makes me what I am. So something that is a reciprocal relationship, something that you need to be aware of. And I suppose the next thing that I would like to touch on is when it comes to juniors, for instance, chambering, when you first start out, or maybe you're in-house, you spend a majority of your time researching things. So as a partner, I put things in court. Your bosses will attend endless meetings if in-house. After one meeting, after another meeting with top upper management level. So that's their role. Your role is different. You will be liaising with external solicitors if you're in-house. You will be, if you're in a firm, for instance, you'll be doing a lot of research on points for arguments. You'll probably be drafting. The bosses usually do not do that. They amend, they don't start drafting. Their scope is other things. Okay, so when you talk about doing research, you have to really be thorough, provide accurate outcome. Because if you make a mistake, and this happens, like for me, if my lawyers make a mistake, I will end up, because I won't have time to check whatever research that they're doing. So if they make a mistake, I will end up making that mistake. And my mistake would have consequences to the client, right? So it's something that is very important. So hone up your research skills. Hone that up. You can practice how to conduct proper research on Lexis, how to find laws from accurate points in books. Even Google search. It's amazing what you find from Google these days on articles written by many lawyers that can point you in the right direction. Make sure that when you give cases, it's not been overruled. When you talk about points of law, it's updated. Things like that. Those things actually matter. Okay. So I suppose the last thing that I want to say when you deal with your superiors is your communication. I suppose you're in a position where you're young, you're just joining an organization. You've never been in an organization before. Being a student is different. So when you join such a big, for those who are in a big firm, small firm, medium-sized firm, an organization, what they don't teach you in law school is to communicate. Because I know that for local graduates, for instance, it's more of like lecturer speak, you listen. Some lecturers will even like it when you ask questions. But it is actually the flip side here. When you're in practice or or your, especially in practice, for instance, people start treating you like an adult. They ask you, they expect an answer. You know, they want you to ask questions. Like, you know, when you give a piece of research, my lawyer is probably looking at it and say, how come they never ask me? This is wrong. Why can't they just ask me what is it that I want so I can tell them? So communication is actually key. I mean, if I talk about communication, that's another presentation all on its own. But like I said, when you communicate, be open. If you do not know something, admit it. You know, they will always be willing to help you. So different styles, they might say, right? But they will help you. So, I mean, it's something that you, in order for you to get across, something that you have to just admit. You're not expected to know everything. It's okay to make a mistake, but whatever it is, you have to tell. If not, people wouldn't know. Right? If you don't tell them something, how can they know? You're not psychic here. So similar to a relationship, you know, when a girlfriend talks to a boyfriend, you know, girlfriend says no means yes, yes means no. I mean, that doesn't work. So you have to be basically open and tell so that people know they can communicate to you their expectations of you so you can meet it. A lot of, I think, problems in organization stems from the inability to communicate with each other. So something that you really would have to develop during chambering or even when you're in-house, develop those effective communication skills. Speak with confidence, speak firmly, speak humbly, all those wrapped up in a nice package together. Okay, JC, maybe next. And then, of course, if you're chambering, maybe not so relevant if you're in-house. If you're chambering, how do you conduct yourself in court? Basics. Like I said, be nice to everybody. If you're in court, it means that you must be nice to the most important people in court. Some people say, oh, it's the judge. Well, of course, the judge decides the case. But for everything else, you have to deal with the registrar or the court interpreter. So be nice to them. Be very nice to them. At the same time, you have to practice good etiquette and decorum. Why? Because I would think lawyers only have their name to carry. So if you start off having a bad reputation, I don't know how you can fix that. So and you start off building a good reputation, one thing wrong that you do, it will always be remembered. Contrary to popular belief, the profession is a small profession. Everybody talks about everybody else. You all know what's going on in the industry. So why not let them talk and speak about good things as opposed to bad things? And whether they speak well or badly of you is actually up to you. Okay? That goes back to the last point with acting with honor and integrity. Yeah. We don't want to be known as the dodgy one. In fact, when you talk about conversation, like me and my lawyers, for instance, when we talk about certain law firms that we have had experience with, forever in my mind are some law firms as the dodgy one. You can never trust what the firm says. You know, you can never trust that they serve you everything. You can never trust them. I mean, what a pity is that? Like I will always, when people ask me about this law firm, instead of me saying, oh, you can give the file to them, good lawyers. Instead of that, I will always say, honestly, dodgy. What is the point of that? It's not worth it. Okay? So always act with honor and integrity. Right? Next, Stacey. All right, so the next point that I want to canvas with you that I think is very, very important is your soft skills. Right? You have the basics of what the law is now, the legal prerequisites, contract, tort, whatever you've learned this, now you've gone past that. So what is it that is perhaps that you need to really explore? Is basically your personality traits, soft skills. So you really have to understand what kind of person you are. By that meaning, what kind of personalities do you have? What kind of qualities, good qualities that you have? So if you're really thorough, that's good quality. You know, and if you're really into detail, that's a good quality. If you have communication skills, because you know you've been noting, you've been attending a lot of activities, that is a good quality. So you must accept that you have these good qualities and you have to emphasize them to make an impression on everybody that is around you in a good way, right? At the same time, if you accept that you have good qualities, you must also accept that you have bad qualities. Because each and every individual is always a mix of both. I have my bad qualities, I have my good qualities. So the struggle is always accepting that I have certain issues within myself. And every day is a process of accepting I have bad qualities too. So what do you do when you realize you have bad qualities? You're prone to lose your temper, you're prone to take credit for somebody else's work, you just want to be ahead, so you don't care about anybody else. You're willing to step on somebody's head so that you can get ahead. That's a bad quality, right? So if you don't try to live in denial, accept that this is who you are, but what you do is you have to manage it. Either you have to control it, clamp down on it, and improve on it. But you won't be able to do that if you don't admit that you have issues. You can't move on from the fact that I have issues, I need to accept it, this is who I am. How do you then improve on it? So every day is like sort of like a working on yourself to become a better version of yourself. That's all that you need to do moving ahead in your career. Okay? So something that you really need to understand. There's plenty of personality tests out there that you can take, because some of us really don't know. We think what we've been doing all our life is fine. I scream at people, it's fine. Because nobody's ever told you off. Yeah, but when it comes to being an adult and moving ahead in your career, somebody is bound to tell you, hey, what's wrong with you? So you have to be able to accept that and say, look, maybe it's me. I need to really look at myself. I might have a problem, and if you admit it, you can move ahead and improve on it. End of story. Not an issue, right? The other thing is, in that process of identifying yourself, good qualities, bad qualities, you have to observe the people around you. And every organization, to me, is like a small country. There's boundaries, there are groups, there are relationships, there are politics. So how do you navigate this very intricate waters of this organization in order to survive and thrive? Not just survive, thrive as well. How do you do well? So you observe the culture of the people around you, the culture of the organization, and you see good people and bad people. There is no such thing as an organization where 100% of the people are good. I've never seen one. I think it's a utopia. I've never seen one. There's always something. There's always bad eggs in the basket. And unfortunately, this is prevalent in a lot of organizations. So you observe the qualities of people around you, and for good people that you meet, you observe and emulate. This is a good quality. You look at one person as a whole. They have good qualities, they have bad qualities. Her good qualities, his good qualities, I want to take. I want to follow, because that will make me a better person. No, and then I can move ahead. And you can also observe the people who are maybe the negative qualities stand out. You observe those negative qualities and you avoid absorbing it. You avoid it. You avoid that person, either avoid that person, or you avoid absorbing those qualities. So you don't become like them. So everything that happens in your observation is meant to teach you. So you have to be willing to absorb and learn this, right, in an organization. Okay, JC, go ahead. All right. So another thing that I think, I do not know whether law school teaches you time management skills. So I'm not sure. I mean, in-house, I do not know also whether there are tools or whether there is any support when it comes to how you manage your time. Yeah, but I can only say this. Everybody gets 24 hours a day. I get 24 hours a day, you get 24 hours a day. Everybody around you also gets 24 hours a day. Some people might be overwhelmed, some people might not be overwhelmed. It's all about managing that time effectively, right? If you are that kind of person who has a lot of things to do, it would help if you do a list and arrange items in your list. So why do I recommend this? Because when you do that task and you cross it off, you get a sense of achievement. So wow, I cross it off. Let's cross the next thing off. So it takes away that feeling of one being overwhelmed. Number two, it gives you that sense of accomplishment when you cross it out, right? Another thing that I also have to point out is like being overwhelmed and afraid is absolutely normal. Some people think this feeling is normal. Why am I feeling overwhelmed? It cannot be. I'm supposed to be happy all the time. You know, I've not met a person, or even myself, that has not been overwhelmed or feeling out of control at some point of time. Okay, it is actually a normal feeling, especially stepping into a new environment, something completely different from, student life. Absolutely different. Of course, you will be overwhelmed and you will be afraid because it's something new for you. So you need time to adjust. So if you're in house, maybe from practice, definitely you will be apprehensive because you're making that jump from practice to in house, or vice versa. You will have that apprehension because it's unknown. So don't think that it's not normal. Don't be afraid to embrace it. Do not let it set you back. You are a greater sum than what your fears, the issues that you have. It doesn't define you. So something that you need to be well aware of. And to me, don't keep it to yourself. You'll be surprised at how many of your colleagues and your friends suffer from the same thing. So it's not just you being deficient. Everybody else is walking through and coming through battles that you have no idea about. Okay, so just be mindful of that. And when it comes to time management, I think to me, lawyers usually and partners usually will always give you a deadline. So this is the last absolute time frame in which they want you to revert. I would always recommend, if you really want to impress, maybe revert a day or two after, because automatically it will make you stand out. So you don't have to do it very often because the first impression is given and that's it. So if you get the very first task or the second task, just before the deadline, that in the mind of the partner or the lawyer, being impressed is already there. So why not do that? Why not do that? Okay. Right, next, JC. Okay, so then I go into the next stage, which is attire. Why is attire important? Because it is the first impression that people will see of you if they don't know you. Right? They don't, and most of the time in a big organization, like some partners, you probably will never see for your chamber. There's so many of us here, right? Similar to you, if you're in-house, you're in a huge organization. If you work there for 10, 15 years, I think some of the bosses from the other departments and entities, you probably never have even met because it's such a big organization. The only impression they have of you is what, if you meet them, is what you wear before they speak to you. So it's actually psychological. That being the case, always dress appropriately for occasions at work. If it's casual Friday, casual. If it's formal, formal. If it's court attire, court attire. Just dress appropriately. Okay, like I said, going to court, meetings. So if you're going to meetings, for instance, you always ask your master or who you are shadowing for the meeting, what is it do I wear? Okay, if sometimes the boss is just, is this a casual meeting? Pakai jeans pun tak apa, kan pakai jeans. Janganlah tiba-tiba pakai court suit pula. Okay, because it's weird. This is weird, right? One thing that you should take note of, do not dress like going to a party, please. If you want to go to a party, then you dress like going to a party lah, right? Don't dress like a hippie, have dreads. I think that's masa you student you boleh lah. Bila sekarang ni macam I don't think it's suitable. Okay, like for instance the firm, we have casual Fridays. You can always dress casually on the day. Okay, next JC. Okay, in your changing process, even if you're a big firm, small firm, you might end up doing some court matters. So I just want to flash a few things when it comes to the video, so that you can see yes or no, basically, right? So you have to, I think.
My lord, my name is Sharis Nordin. I cannot hear you. My lord, my name is Sharis Nordin. I cannot hear you. My lord, my name is Sharis Nordin. Mr. Sharis, I cannot hear you and I will not hear you. You're not properly dressed for this court. You do not have your beak on and you do not have your robe on. It's an open court matter. My lord, I'm not aware of this requirement. I'm just
And
here to
why is
withdraw.
your blazer unbuttoned?
Does it have to be buttoned?
Unfortunately, Mr. Shari, since you're not properly dressed for court today, your matter will be adjourned with cost of the day awarded to your opposing counsel.
It basically pertains to how somebody's not tied properly for court. There's no rope, there's no bail. Because of that, the judge pretends not to hear counsel, which is what usually happens. And then thereafter adjourns the matter with cost of the day to be awarded to the opposing side. So this basically shows the importance of dressing appropriately in court or wherever it is that you go, because it really has consequences. Okay, so I'll go on to the next slide. I think you have to reshare. I think, Emilia, you probably have to flash again. Yes.
Are you the status of the case?
I'm sorry, you have to stop over there. Who is this individual sitting right here?
Oh, this is the defendant, Your Honor.
And don't you know that it's your duty to introduce all parties as the counsel for the plaintiff?
My apologies, Your Honor.
Guys, there's basically a clip of, parties, or rather the plaintiff failing to introduce the defendant. So just to make you guys aware, that if you go to court, Jingring, or if you're a student, go to court and you're the plaintiff, you have to introduce the other party. Failure to do so really annoy either the judge or the registrar. So it's something that you need to take note of as well. Jingring students, you probably be going to court and having to do this. If you're the defendant, you don't have to. Right, maybe next one. Do we have another video? Okay, so Emilia will, JC will share. Yeah, thanks, Emilia. Okay, just a bit of brief details, guys. If you are chambering, just something you need to be aware of. So unless and until you have a short call, you're really not entitled to appear in court or mention. So for anything, to conduct cases, to do mentions for your master or the firm, you can't do it. So these days, what you have to do, short call, you just file Borang 3, and then Borang 4 and 5, right? I think it's pretty quick process because these days you just have to file it and get the order. Previously, short order, my time, somebody has to go and move the short call. So there's two moving processes that is being done away with. So once you're short call, you can then appear before a judge or registrar, a magistrate or sessions court judge in chambers, and a registrar was already in court. So that's something for you to be aware of. So if you are from a firm where they force you to appear in open court, remember they cannot do that. It will get you into trouble if you are queried. So be very well aware of your rights when you do this. Right, 3 months after your short call, you'll be authorized to appear in open court before a magistrate, to conduct any case or matter. So, GC, you can proceed. So just as a tip, if you're given a task to check particular court's location for either CM, hearing, and trial, these days CMs can be, and hearings, even trials can be online, but the court works in shifts, so there might be cases where it's actually physical, and you're like, oh my god, how do I check? Because they probably won't tell you. So you have to go to the EFS Kehakiman website, and you key in the location of the court and the suit number. Then you will, a figure will appear. Can you move on to the next one, you see? When you key in, this is what comes up. So you'll be able to see which court it is, who is it before the registrar, what the dates are. So then you will be able to go to the lawyer or the partner or even yourself, where everything is done. Everything is recorded, so online, so you can see it. Okay, next, JC. Okay, so Emilia, can you assist?
Yeah, sure.
This is the case management. where your case managements are, and then you appear in court. So you have to go to the kiosk in the middle lobby of the floor of the court. And there are kiosks like this where you enter the suit number and you have to enter that you're present, because there is a TV that calls out only when parties are present. So you have to key in the suit number and tell them who you're acting for and say you're present. If you're mentioning on behalf, you can key in also that the other side is present as well. You can tell the registrar when you appear before them, I'm mentioning on behalf of who and who. Okay, so that is how it works. Just a quick tip so that you won't be lost when you appear. Okay, JC, next. Next we have. Okay, if you have a CM before the magistrate or judges in person, go ahead to there's a long table before where the lawyer sits, where the interpreter sits. You have to record your attendance with the court interpreter first. Magistrates and sessions court, either they punya kiosk, they don't have that close. Okay, so next, JC. Okay, and then what is it that you do in case management? Address either the registrar, the magistrate, or judge. My lady, or kalau judge, magistrate, sessions court judge, Puan. If it's high court, my lady, my name is so and so. I act for the plaintiff, and my learned friend, whoever it is, appears for the defendant. If it is open court, remember to bow. Yeah, you're bowing to the court. Always know the facts of your case, so that if you have any questions, you're not like lost. Okay, just do a bit of reading of the file before the day you appear. Okay. Obtain the correct directions given by the court. Very important. So as the court is giving directions, write it down in case you forget, because sometimes the directions banyak. Okay, something that you need to be mindful of. And then if you're lost, you don't know what to do, because you already disclosed that you're a pupil, never mind, you just stand down the matter. Obtain directions from partner or lawyer in charge. They will call them up. The court will stand out because they understand that you're a pupil. They might scold you, but they also stand it out. Okay, so next, JC. Okay, so that's the introduction, as I was saying. If it's in Malay, dengan izin Tuan Puan. Yeah. Pelatih dalam kamar, if English, pupils in chambers, right? Chambering pupils, sorry. Yeah, and who you are representing. Okay, carry on, JC. Okay, so far as the language that we use when it comes to speaking in court, for instance, just to be mindful, it's a bit different. It's like there's a bit of a jargon, just to not annoy the judge or the sessions court, the magistrate. So, may it please you, my lord, your lordship, with your lordship's leave, when you want to speak. So, in the beginning, when you want to speak, you can use those kind of language. Don't say, hi judge, good morning. Maybe not. Maybe in a social setting you can do that, but not in court. When you want to refer to documents, you refer them by way of the enclosures. So when you file something, if you look at a physical file when you start chambering, there will be an enclosure number on the right top hand corner. The court will always look at that, not the plaintiff's first affidavit in support, but they look at the enclosure and then you describe it. So quick tip for you there. And when you're referring to authorities and not exhibits, so if you're helping your boss, for instance, they refer to enclosure. What you look at the document, which enclosure? I know this enclosure. I find the enclosure. I give it to my boss. Okay, and then I refer your lordship's or your ladyship's attention to authorities. Find the authorities for your bosses if you are assisting. Okay, even if you are conducting your own hearing, you can in chambers. Yeah, during the last period of your chambering, 3 months. Then you find it lah. But then this is how you refer it. May I refer your lordship? So then when they hear it, they also like, so nice to hear, right? Okay, you can't just say, your lordship, please look at this button, look at this tab. You cannot say that. The language is slightly different. Okay, carry on, JC. Okay, so open court hearing, things that you need to be aware of, basic things. If you're on your feet and your opponent stands to interrupt, which they shouldn't, but if they do, you sit down. We're not a market, not parliament. Parliament lain, forget about it. But generally in court, only one advocate should be on their feet. So if they stand up, your opponent sits down, your opponent will sit down. It's just copies, just raise lah. Okay, next, GC. And then this is very important. Sometimes, when you're very overzealous, you just start out. So my first hearing, I want to really say everything, be thorough, but the judge is not following you. So if you're doing an online hearing, you look at the face. When they want to start, they look at you and say, okay, Yes, there you start. So as they are typing, as they're writing, when they are trying to tulis, maybe you should slow down or stop. So you either look at their face or look at their pen. These days, pen I put the keyboard. So you look at the keyboard and take the verbal cues or non-verbal cues before you start. So you always be sensitive to that. Okay. Next, Stacey. Okay, so these days, even before COVID time, case managements and hearings are actually conducted by way of peer review. So, depending on which organization or what kind of law firm, you may have a couple of passwords. So, if you are in the firm, for instance, Rafique and Partners, I have my own username and password. So does the partners. So, the lawyers will actually take the username and register. You can actually attend e-review case management on your phone. There's an app. So this is basically how it looks like, and you just type in whatever directions. Introduce yourself by way of typing, then you wait, the other side will respond, and then you wait, the court will respond. So it's pretty much a lot more convenient than it used to be before. There are some case managements which are still done face to face, but rarely, most of the time, it is e-review now. So something to take note of. So you can get the passwords from them if you have to attend, and you log in and you just follow the directions and type it out. Okay. Okay, next, Tracy. Okay, this is where I need the media to help. Good attitude, bad attitude in court.
My name is Hajar. I appear on behalf of the plaintiff. For today's case management, my lord,
I do apologize, but is it my clock or is it your watch that's a bit late? Because it's 9:15 now. The message is supposed to start at 9 o'clock.
oh, but my lord, the traffic was really bad today, my lord. It's something that was beyond out of my control, my lord.
I do not want to hear excuses.
I understand, my lord. I do apologize, my lord.
So just like I said, the first part of the video, the first part of my talk, I spoke about being punctual. Like I said, if you're not punctual, there are legal consequences. And why is it that judges or even registrars get upset when you're late? It's because not that they want to scold you, but because they have hundreds of files that they need to manage, they need to hear. So you being late holds up everybody else, right? So that is where I think punctuality, number one. Number two, if you're late, just admit it. Just apologize and move on. And you say, okay, after you apologize, they say it's okay. If you come up with excuses, then they start grading you and grading you and grading you further. So just apologize for your deficiencies and move on. So there's another video I think earlier that I probably need you to share.
My lord, I sincerely apologize, my lord. I was late this morning. I was stuck in a really bad traffic, but that is not an excuse, my lord. I do sincerely apologize for delaying my lord's time.
That's basically it. This actually until or something in this one. You also don't have that much time to put until this one and so maybe this video or one more video. Next.
My lord, I sincerely.
Is this the one?
Next one. Emma, you can continue sharing video because I need to talk about this. Again, one thing that you need to be aware of is your humility, right? The judge is in a superior position compared to you. So it's not worth it fighting with them. Okay, all the registrars are really not worth it. You always have to know when to stop and apologize. It applies to everybody. House girl, court girl, those lessons in court you can take in your workplace as well. Okay, so next Emilia. Okay, so this is a sample where somebody loses their temper. So let's not do that. Let's look at it.
And for reasons stated above, the decision I now pronounce is in favor of the defendant with cause.
My lord, this is not fair, my lord. Yeah, my lord, I think you're being very biased. You have not read all the submissions that is before, my lord.
You have to hold on there. You cannot say, if you say it one more time, I will charge you in contempt.
Okay, so this is an example where the lawyer goes beyond the professional boundaries and loses their temper. Because the case didn't go their way. So you must understand as lawyers that you argue your case to the best of your abilities. You can't win every single case. case you argue. So if you lose graciously, do not give off an impression to the judge that, oh, this one is a temperamental one, you cannot accept defeat. That image will always be there. Okay, maybe next, Amelia. Okay, just a few pointers. In light of the recent COVID pandemic, you have to go to court and you say, I suppose, scan using the MySpectra app and wear face masks. So even as you enter the court and you sit down and wait for your case to be called, please wear your mask. Before you take off your mask, some judges are very particular. So before you can even take off your mask, you have to get court's leave. So now my lady can get from the court's permission leave to take off your mask. When you speak, and when your speaking session is over, you have to put on back your mask and you sit down. So that's something you have to be aware of. Okay. Next, Emilia. Oh, she. Okay, so I think it's kind of getting focusing on that. So I come to the last portion of my slides. I think I'm 5 minutes over the time here. Here's the thing that I think your goal when it comes to the completion of your GPA, I don't what the goal after you is. But the first goal, I suppose, is to finish it. I don't want to abandon my GPA in the 3rd month, 4th month, 5th month. I want to finish it. I finished everything in my life, so I want to finish this too, to complete the process. And number 2, I suppose, during these 9 months when you don't carry that much responsibility, you want to be adequately prepared for either practice or in-house, where in-house you actually, you're given a role and you're responsible for it. In chambering, it's a learning process because everything else, usually the partner or the lawyer takes charge. You're given bits and pieces of work. So those kind of opportunities allow you to grow, right? So you have to take that opportunity. And then when it comes to the law and your research skills, I think you have to put what was learned, whatever it is, the very basics that you learn, to put it into practice in your chambering time or your chambering process. And lastly, I think the most important thing throughout this chambering period, apart from all that, is you need to meet and connect with others. This is, I think, the key part of chambering process for you to not only know the law, but to know how to interact with people around you, which I think is a skill essential in your career path. Without being able to communicate with others, well, it's going to be stalled. It's going to be issues. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. Now, before I go to the Q&A session, I just want to flash a video for everybody that I think will be beneficial. So I don't know whether Emilia can flash the video, or you guys can.
Emilia can.
Emilia, can you flash the YouTube video?
Coming. Okay.
And you start browsing Netflix looking for something to watch. You scroll through different titles, you even read a few reviews, but you just can't commit to watching any given movie. Suddenly it's been 30 minutes and you're still stuck in infinite browsing mode. So you just give up. You're too tired to watch anything now. So you cut your losses and fall asleep. I've come to believe that this is the defining characteristic of our generation. Let's call it keeping our options open. Leaving home and coming here is a lot like entering a long hallway. You walk out of the room in which you grew up and into this place with thousands of different doors to infinitely browse. When Hollywood tells tales of courage, they usually take the form of slaying the dragon. It's all about the big brave moments. The most menacing dragons that stand in the way are the everyday boredom and distraction and uncertainty that can erode our ability to commit to anything for the long haul. As I've grown older here, I've also started seeing the downsides of having so many open doors. Nobody wants to be stuck behind a locked door, but nobody wants to live in a hallway either. It's great to have options when you lose interest in something, but I've learned here that the more times I do this, the less satisfied I am with any given option. And lately, the experiences I crave are less the rushes of novelty and more those perfect Tuesday nights when you eat dinner with the friends who you have known for a long time, who you've made a commitment to, and who won't quit you because they found someone better. We may have come here to help keep our options open, but I leave believing that the most radical act we can take is to make a commitment to a particular thing, to a place, to a profession, to a cause, to a community, to a person. To show our love for something by working at it for a long time, and to close doors and forego options for its sake. We need not be afraid, for we have in our possession the antidote to our dread, our time, free to be dedicated to the slow but necessary work of turning visions into projects, values into practices, and strangers into neighbors. We should pick a damn movie and see it all the way through.
Thank you. I wanted to flex the video because I think it's important. I think as an adult, when we start out changing or we start out in-house or wherever it is we are right now, it is a time, the first time I think in our lives, for us to seriously do something and realizing that good things happen and it takes time. You can't get the results you want overnight. It's impossible. I've only been able to do this now and lead the team that I led, and I'm leading still after 16 years. I wouldn't be able to do it in your position. But at the same time, to realize that the only difference between me and you is that I was born first, so that's why I'm here first. So I think given the circumstances where it is flipped, or if you were born first, you'll probably be doing much better than I could ever be. So you have to give yourself that benefit of time of committing to something. Somebody asked me, how long should I commit before I realize it's not for me? I said, until you realize it's not for you. But until you realize it, how do you then know to stop something, right? So give yourself that chance to excel, but also realize that excelling at something means doing it over and over and over again. So with that, I end my talk. Thank you everybody for listening. If there's any questions, I'll be free to respond to it. Thanks, Amelia.
Thank you, Idza. Everyone, I'm just going to put the QR code, the link, and the event code in the meeting chat. So if you have any questions, please post it there. I'll just be sharing the Q&A now. Okay.
There's quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay. So the first question. Which one do you prefer? Doing chambering for only one area or chambering for different areas?
Okay, so I mean, for the benefit of the audience, I think we can only share my experience. So maybe my tips will be limited to my own experience, so that I would have to caveat that first of all. But when it comes to chambering, I chambered in a big firm. But I think when it comes to a big firm and small firm, it's not that much different. If you're chambering in a small firm, for instance, you'll be doing pretty much everything that the firm does, right? So you don't have a choice. You'll be exposed to a lot of areas as you go. But if you're doing chambering, you have some of the bigger firms or big-size firms. For me, what I did was I tried everything because I did not know what I want. I'm one of those law students that when I graduated, I didn't know what I liked, what I hated, and that was simply because I'm the first lawyer in my family. We had no other lawyers in the family, so I don't have any mentors to look up to tell me what to do, what to take. So I decided, okay, I'll just try everything. And how do I decide what I want to do? I realized what I didn't like, so what I hated, I pushed aside. Okay, so that's my recommendation would be possibly do everything, and then the things that you don't like, maybe stop doing when you start practice. So hopefully that answers that question.
Okay. Next, how do you deal with burnouts that you go through, or even your lawyers go through?
I think for my lawyers, I really can't answer that question. But for me, you'll be surprised that I've had a lot of burnouts over the years. When I was younger, I have to admit that I didn't know how to manage it. So even quitting everything and not doing anything for a week doesn't really help me. So, because I have so much work, I have to get back to it. But to deal with my burnout, what I do is I can feel it coming. I feel like, oh, why am I doing this? I want to quit practice. Open up a restaurant somewhere beside a beach. I kid you not, I've thought about that before. Maybe become a barista because I love coffee. I can make coffee for myself. I really have thought about this. So I know it's coming. What I do is I'll take a small break, maybe a couple of days. I sleep it off. I spend time with my family. I sometimes in the middle of the day I feel like I can't take it because there's so many things to do. I'm exhausted. It happens, you know. And I go to a coffee shop somewhere and disappear. And go to a mani-pedi. So for me, I think how a person manages it depends on that person. What is it that will give you that release? Resort to it. And you must understand yourself and realize something is coming. The burnout is coming. You always know that breaking point where you feel I can't take this anymore. So learn to identify that, and before it comes hitting you like a ton of bricks, take a break. You know, however, and do activities that you love to make you miss doing your job again. So that's what I do. If I go and not do legal work for a long time, I find that I miss it. So when I do it, I complain a lot. Oh, my lawyers can tell you what I complain about when it comes to doing. But I find that if I don't do it for maybe a week, I miss it. So I really do like it. But it doesn't mean I have to like it every day. So if I don't like it, I take a break. Okay, so next question, Amelia.
How do we deal with the expectations of the superiors as the pupils are still learning?
Right. And this again, I think this is a very good question. And unfortunately, there is not one specific answer because each superior is different. Each superior is a person on its own. So I think I go back to the tips that I gave before. You must know your superior. Unfortunately, you have to be. What happens if you find that your superior is perhaps of a very different personality than yours and it's not working out? If that be the case, please be frank with either the HR or if there's avenues in venting out or addressing your concerns, please do that. But when it comes to each and every superior, they're very different individuals. So it goes back to you trying to understand what they want of you. But actually, every superior that I've met across the board, even mine, I talk about dealing with the managing partner of the firm who manages his entire firm. All I find is that he wants the job to be done and done well. So the goal is that. So whatever it takes for me to fulfill that requirement, I do. And ultimately, that's what it is. So maybe, I hope that answers your question. So please, perhaps do some research. Maybe ask him, but if he's not the type that you can ask, he or she, ask the secretary first. Can I ask this question? You mean, or what kind of person is he, or she is? Then it will assist you in trying to understand or dealing with it. So if, let's say, your superiors have expectations you cannot meet, and I don't think that is very often because they don't really have much of an expectation on a pupil. They just want you to do good research, for instance. They just want you to do it well and revert within the timeline. They just want you to revert with a piece of work and not have typographical errors, not have grammatical errors. Sometimes it's just there actually. So at least you get that right, and then you can move on from there. All right. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, next. Do you supervise your pupil closely, or do you expect your pupil to be independent with minimum supervision?
Alright, so this I have to actually be quite frank. I lead a team of, how many people? 6 or 7. I think I'm leading a team of 7 now, and I think we're growing. So what does that mean? It means that my attention is divided between 7 people, which are actually my lawyers. What does this mean for the pupil? To be honest, sometimes I do not have time to directly teach them, or even if I do teach them, it's on a sort of a minimal level, minimal attraction. The only time that I actually manage to interact with them is when I go out, take them out makan, take them out, for drinks. That is actually when I get to know them better. But on a working level, it's quite a tiered system, so it's quite difficult for me to deal with them directly. But at the same time, I do want to make sure that they meet the standards. But how do I do that? I will always look at the work they produced via the lawyers. So what the lawyers usually do to me, and this is my experience, is that they will forward the work which they have amended, and they said the initial draft was prepared by such and such people. So if I do want to amend it, usually, and I have time to sit down, I probably call them all in, and then point them out what needs to be fixed for each of it, what's missing, what can be improved on, things like that. But subject to the fact that I have the time. So honest truth on this.
Okay. Could you share with us the values that a law firm usually looks for in an interviewee before accepting them as a pupil in chambers?
Okay, I think, Emilia, because I do not conduct the interviewing process, I'm not the right person to answer this question. But I think you should answer that question. But before I let Emilia answer the question, to me, what I look for is certain qualities, integrity, honesty, pleasant personality, and the most important thing to me is somebody that can work in a team player. I don't care how smart you are, but if you cannot work with a team, you cannot work with everybody else, then it's going to be a problem for me. I cannot risk it. So that's for me. I think, Emilia, you maybe can share the rest of what you are looking for.
I think I echo the exact same thing. What's important is, of course, everyone, there can be 10 people who can achieve 10 A's and then, a 4 flat CGPA, for example, but there's a lot of values that not everyone has. So it's the integrity, the hardworkingness, the fact that you can work in a team. Because if at the end of the day, if you work solo, you won't go that far, right? You work as a team, you are capable of so much more. So it's essentially the same thing. Yeah. Okay.
I hope answers. Everybody's anonymous. Nobody's telling me their names.
Yeah. Okay, next. How many files do you juggle at a time, and how do you manage that? Oh, this is gonna be a difficult one for you.
I really do not know how many files. I think hundreds, a lot. A lot. So the answer is a lot. I've lost count. Actually, there's quite a few. So different lawyers in my team manage different portfolios, and there's 7 of them. So you can imagine the amount of files that I go through in a day, and there is still a bottleneck because everything goes through me before it goes up to the clients or the court. So they might be busy, but of course I am busier because everything goes through me before it goes out. And how do I manage that? Like I said, my team members are almost everything to me. I have help. I cannot do this alone, and it's something I recognize very much. So without their help, I cannot get anything across. I won't be able to have time to draft things from scratch, to do the research, to have coherent conversations on ideas and strategy. That I do in a team setting. So the only way I can do that is with the help of my lawyers, which are very, very important to me. Hope that answers the question.
So I think the next few questions, the next 2 questions are kind of similar. How do you choose the place for chambering? Is it better to go for a small firm or a big firm? Does it matter, or is there any vast difference between the 2?
Okay, I think there are quite a bit of a difference when you talk about the size of the firms and what they do. Bigger firms tend to specialize in certain areas. So if you're attached to a particular area, for instance, it will be hard for you to do other work because they are very specialized. Like my work is specialized, it's different from my other partners in the firm who are also specialized in their own area. In a smaller setting, I think you do everything. So whatever the firm does, you do, and you'll be doing most of the network as well. So but there won't be any areas of specialization, or if there is, it's the same person that's doing it. And also, I think because there are fewer people in a smaller firm, it probably a more intimate setting, where everybody knows everybody else. Here, it's a bigger firm that you can't have that because everybody is spread across different floors. You rarely see each other. I mean, I've not seen some of my partners for the longest of time face to face because we can't have gatherings. You see, which usually I see them 2-3 times a year. Now I don't see them at all, apart from video conference calls. So maybe those things are something you need to take note of. There is a difference, definitely.
This is a very interesting question. You have seen many pupils and young lawyers come and go. What is one common mistake that you see crop up quite often?
to me, I think one trait that some of the chambering pupils that I've seen dealt with, young lawyers that I've dealt with, and it's similar, strangely enough, one trait I think that, or mistake rather, is they think they have nothing to learn. Usually, like when there's nothing I can teach them, or there's nothing my lawyers can teach them, there's nothing that the firm can teach them, because they're absolutely best student, best muter. My parents tell me I'm the best thing that ever happened to them, which is true for the parents. But in a professional setting, it's very different. You have to prove your worth. I don't owe anything to you. You come here, do a chambering or pupillage. Why is it that I have to give you the treatment that your parents give you? It's very different. So that same trait I see for the lawyers or chambering pupils that have come and gone that maybe have not been retained, or maybe that doesn't stay long. They think there's nothing we can teach them. So hopefully that answers the question.
Agreed. Okay, I think I'll just take 2 more questions. Does grades matter as much in securing a pupillage position in big firms, even if the candidate has sufficient knowledge and skills?
I think again, this is a question not best answered by me, because I don't vet through the applications. But to me, right, I think it's a very broad question, because sufficient knowledge and skills, I don't know what that is. So I think what we're looking for is a balance of personalities, and we take on, at least for this firm, you might take on somebody who's done great extracurricular activities, but with lower grades, because we know when somebody is active, their grades won't be so high because they're busy doing activities. And then we'll probably take somebody who has really high grades, but maybe not active in any activities, because if you spend all your time studying, what time do you have to do your extracurricular activities? So if it's a big batch, we actually try to take a mix of both. Am I correct, Emilia?
100%. I agree 100%. Okay, last question. I think this one can also be thoughts applicable throughout for any, not just for pupillage, for interviews or interviews. What are the red flags on interviews for pupillage?
Because I don't know whether either pupils, students, or people who are looking for jobs know this, but there's a lot of research that we did prior to calling you in for an interview. We do a social media search. We talk amongst ourselves. Some of us have connections with lecturers from universities, so we'll probably be able to know a lot about you even before you step into the door. Sometimes we actually do call references. So if it doesn't match what you say on your CV, it really does become a red flag for me, at least. When you come in, I think gaps in years, for instance, is something that I would want to know about. Like, why is it that you waited for a year or 2 years after you graduate before you want to apply for pupillage? Please explain. If it's not explained in the CV, you ask in the interview. And I suppose in an interview, the way you come off, how you dress, I will probably be very particular about that. So, like I said, if you come in dressing for a party, I'm like, okay, maybe no. Because I want somebody who's dressed professionally. Because if you're shadowing me for meetings and you're dressed like that, tak boleh. Okay, tak boleh. And the way you carry yourself as well. Can you answer questions well? Do you have a frozen look on your face? That's something. Can you stand on your own and stand when it comes to carrying yourself throughout the interview? Is something I would look for that. Maybe if you want to add on.
So I think some of the red flags that I would say I've experienced in interviews are actually when they badmouth either their lecturers or their friends or their peers or previous internships. Of course, sometimes it's good to be honest, right? But when you can tell when a person is very malicious or ill-intentioned in that way. So that could be one of the red flags that I've noticed during interviews.
Yeah. If you're talking bad about other people, then you'll probably be talking bad about us also.
Yeah.
At some point of time later.
Building that trust is very important. Okay, I think one last question since we only have 2 more. What do firms want to see in a cover letter?
I really cannot answer this, Emilia. I think this is for you.
Okay. I think, okay, so what I noticed a trend with pupils is that they always repeat the exact same thing in their cover letter, what is already in the CV. And you shouldn't do that. So a cover letter is a 1 page. Don't make it 2 to 3 pages. At most 1.5 pages of what you want to highlight to the recruiter, right? So you should put in your best achievements, also what you think of the firm, why the firm. So is of course you can replicate the exact same cover letter to like 10 different firms, but if you put in why you choose Rafique and Partners specifically, that would bring more value to your cover letter, because we know that you're interested, you've done your research on the firm, you know why you want to be in the firm, the partners, the practice areas. These are some of the things that you should be putting in your cover letter. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. Do you want to add anything or
That's good.
okay? I think that's all. One more question: do participants receive a recording of this talk afterwards? I don't think so.
I think it's a webinar on demand, right?
We can.
On the website, right, Emilia?
Yeah, we can do that. If we get the approval, then it should not be a problem.
Okay, so hope that answers the question.
Anonymous. Everyone here is anonymous.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Idza. It was wonderful. I learned so much as well. I wish I had this exact same thing when I was a pupil. Oh well, times are so much better now. Okay, thank you everyone for joining. Hope you will be able to join us for the next ZRP webinar series. Please follow us on LinkedIn, Rafique and Partners, and our Instagram at ZRP News. Thank you. Thank you, Idza.
Thanks, everyone.